Okay, folks, this is the first live field test of the uh, augmented reality astronomy project I've been working on. As we see here, this is my backyard. Um, that shadow. Okay. Sorry about that. Forgot to turn off my audio. Um, this is my backyard, and that shadow that you see right here, that is my camera and mounts shadow from my neighbor's yard. Nothing special, nothing unusual. There's something fairly common. We're going up to Cygnus. There we go. Now here's where the augmented reality comes in. So we're now centered on the target and have the overlay in place. It's a little off, so let me adjust it real quick. As you can see, the field of view, the overlay field of view, and what we're seeing on the camera match up pretty well. Um, I'm using an SLT mount, so the go-tos aren't perfect. So I'll probably have to move this around a little bit throughout the night. But it allows us to do fun little things like this. Let me try to center this up real quick. Wrong direction. Again, like I said, not perfect with the SLT mount. Let's come up just a little bit more. And that should be pretty good. Hopefully you can. All right, I'm going to back down the mic sensitivity a little bit. All right, hopefully you can hear me. Okay, so um, as you can see it here, interim clusters here, cooling tower, and crescent is right there. I'm not running any filters at this point in time, and I'm running wide open under white zone skies, so you'll have to forgive how bright the skies are. Let me see if I can get a color balance. There we go. All right. So how this is essentially working is I'm running OBS and I'm doing a window capture on SharpCap, and then I'm running Stellarium with Stellarium scope connected to the mount, um, and running a window capture of Stellarium as well. What I did in OBS is I went in and used a color filter to make all the black in into the Stellarium display um, transparent. So essentially, we are seeing through Stellarium, essentially. Um, and looks like we got a jet passing through. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom out. Try to find something else we can pick up. Let's see. I think that's still behind the tree, maybe. Oh, we'll do this. Now, hopefully, it'll slew in correctly. But one of the fun things to watch is this. Object. Slew. Do you not want to slew? Why are you not slewing? Well, that's no fun. Of course, this being a live stream, of course something's going to go wrong. I might have lost the camera. I think I lost the camera. Hold on, let me go reset the camera real quick, folks. Okay, I'm back. Alright, hold on. There we go. Okay. As you can see, the overlay is not perfect. Let me reset my FOV. There you go. It's off a little bit. And it's rotationally off axis slightly. But hopefully this will work out for us. Okay, so what I was talking about was we're going to go over. We're going to pick. There you go. That's close enough. Okay. Current object. Slew. Now what we will see is we will see constellation stars matching up with stars matching up with the constellation lines as the scope is slewing to the next target. Now, what's fun about this, and let's say a public outreach situation, is it helps. It would help folks um, essentially connect the dots, so to speak. Let me go ahead and adjust adjust positioning. Let's bring this down a bit. Bring it down a little bit more. And let's call that reasonably close. Sync. There we go. Close enough. Once you reach the target and you want to pull up just the view itself, I can then go over into OBS and disable the overlay so that you get that. And if somebody goes, well, what's this star here? Go back into OBS, re-enable the overlay, and click on that star. Like I said, it's off a little bit, so when it's dialed in perfectly, you can actually usually nail the stars pretty easily. Let me go ahead and try to adjust this again and drop this down. And went a little bit too far. Let me bring it back up. Oh, wait, I'm doing it wrong. Hold on. I'm getting which direction I need to move it backwards. Again, this is essentially a live field test, so let's see if we can do this. We'll go over and do a crosshair real quick. That is our center point. So still off a little bit, but for the most part, we're okay. Again, there we go. That's a bit better. Now, if you have a mount that can run a little bit better, go-tos, more accurate go-tos, it works out a lot better. I will actually probably end up testing this on an EQ mount at some point, just to see how well that performs. Now, another fun thing we can do with this is we will go right there. Let's do the hump of the whale. Current object. Telescope to slew. And we'll now watch the stars move across the screen, move across the live display, and the stars will drop into the constellation lines. Looks like my air cleaner's kind of throwing fits. I'm going to mute the mic for a second. I was talking and forgot to turn the mic back on. So what I was saying while the mic was off is, let's say you're doing, public outreach, and you have just this camera, you have just the camera showing on a display, and you're slewing around the sky, and you're showing this, and somebody comes up, and they're like, "What's that? What's that fuzzy little spot there?" With the overlay set up, you go, "Well, that's Andromeda Galaxy." And they're like, it's, and they can essentially see, you know, some of your basic stellarium info right there on the display. See how high up in the sky it is, um, how far away it is, things like that. Now, if you happen to be on a Mac, and I haven't tried this because I'm not on a Mac, I don't have the ability to try this with the Sky Safari desktop app, but I would assume that it should work on the Sky Safari desktop app for a Mac. Um, if it does, then you can have this exact same overlay, and then when you click on targets, you can pull up the nice info windows that the Sky Safari program on the Mac has. The closest you can get to this is to do it with CDC. Uh, it's kind of hit or miss. I played with it a little bit, and it works, but it doesn't sometimes. I couldn't get it to work perfectly right, but um, Stellarium something everybody knows. And when you click on a target, you get this, select a target, you get this nice big title prompt here. So it makes it a little bit easier. This is kind of what I've been playing with. Um, this is one phase of a much larger project um, that I will go into more later whenever I can get the time to actually start, well, the time and the money to start building phase two. Because phase two would take this whole augmented reality kind of thing to a completely different level. Um, but once I get a lot of the a lot of the miscellaneous bugs and nitpickings, as much as I can, get that stuff taken care of with this guy, we'll um, post a how-to video, post a guide video as to how I put everything together and what settings I used. Um, as far as lenses, various lenses, make a couple suggestions. Uh, I said for this lens being wide open at 1.7 and it being such an old lens, it's actually not bad. It works pretty well. Um, as far as my selection of lenses, part of the reason why I picked this is your um, your central area of uh, your perceptual area, critical area of perception in human vision is only a couple degrees wide. So if you're looking up in the sky, it would only be this tiny little spot here. So it's kind of like when you focus intently on something, you see just that tiny little area, and everything else is kind of seems less important, not as contrasty, things like that. Um, so you have your central perceptual area, which is about 2 degrees. Then you have your parallel area, which is I think 5 degrees, which would be about so big. Um, then you have your macular, which is 18 degrees, which is actually larger than the vertical on this field of view. And it's about like so. So if you were to go outside and look up at the sky right now, the same targets, at the same thing at Andromeda right now, if you're where I'm at, if you're looking at Andromeda right now, and you can actually see it, color aside, let me see if I can fix that. There. So color aside, this is kind of what you see. You see kind of dim little fuzzy blob. And then of course these stars, pretty much and a dim little fuzzy blob, and then these stars, and then pretty much everything outside of this tiny little area would be not a critical perceptual area. But as far as the field of view, what you see here, um, this is very close to kind of looking outside. If you're to look outside, if you're doing binos like 7x50 binos, 7x50 binos are about half this vertical field. Um, so we're a little bit wider than binos. So this is kind of somewhere in between low magnification bino and you just kind of sort of sitting outside staring up at the sky at night. That's part of the reason why I wanted to use the a 30mm lens. And if I ended up doing this on actually doing this at a public outreach event, this will kind of work out pretty well too, especially if you get the display right. For example, what I see here, if you're running anywhere from like a 15 to 20-inch monitor, and you're watching this full screen, it's reasonably close to kind of what you get outside. Um, that's kind of, like I said, part of the reason why I did this. And I'm mumbling, but I'm going to play around a little bit, and I'll mute the mic, but I'm going to play around a little bit and show you what this little overlay setup can do. Sorry, just needed to find my reference point in like reference to the yard. Okay, so hold on a second. I'm not running a UHC or any filters, but I know with an LPS filter last night running like 8 second exposures, even with the veil low in the sky, I was actually able to pick this up a little bit with this setup. So as you can see in the photo itself here in the background, that's a little bit of Andromeda. Now, imagine if you use this same setup under like decent skies. Um, you'd be able to pull out a lot of things. So make I think it would make for something really interesting uh, to bring in novices and kids to see something like this. I think they'd get a kick out of it. I know my daughter does. My daughter thinks this is awesome. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this um, in the live stream. What we're seeing here is on my actual monitor, I can just pick up hints, just barely, of North American. Let me try to play with this a bit and see if we can actually pull any of it in under under these skies. I don't think I'm going to be able to. Let me go ahead and reset the settings. I'm also running this at 500 millisecond exposure, so half a second exposures. Went and dropped a filter on this and ran longer exposures. You'd definitely be able to start to pick this out, even under my skies. So there we go, a tiny little moon. Looks like I'm a little out of focus. Plus, it's only a couple pixels big, so. Alright. Now, another thing that you can do with this overlay, with programs like Stellarium that have crater markings, is you can also, let me just simulate this real quick. Alright, zoom in, get the overlay to match, magnification, and what you can do is you can actually hotkey this. Then sit here and click on craters. Now I'm still trying to figure out a way to, if there's a way to force stellarium to always track the scope without highlighting it, which would be real nice because if you tell it to track the scope, it will always keep the scope centered, even if you clicked on other objects. But again, with an overlay, and let me adjust sharp cap's positioning real quick. So with the overlay, you could be sitting here looking at the moon in at an event, using this at an event, and click on craters and discuss craters, specific targets, and actually have Stellarium pull up information as to the diameter of the crater, where it's located, and some basic landform descriptions. Now, what I'll probably do is I'll see about reaching out to Stellarium developers to see if they can't sort of work something into this. See if they can't do that. Because I think as far as an outreach tool, an educational tool, some kind of setup like this would be great. So I'm going to go back to my default view, back into sharp cap, set it back to auto. Again, we're off a little bit, but that's okay. My camera hasn't dropped, which is good. Alright, so let's see. I was able to pick this up last night. Let me play with this a little bit. Don't think we're gonna be able to get it. I might need to find a reference point. I think that was the area in there. Hold on a second. Because another thing that you can do with this is you can also go in, tell it to show stars. We are off a little bit. So if we were to actually right about there. So yeah, it should be fairly centered. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Again, under darker skies or with filters, you would actually be able to pull out targets like this. I think when I was looking at it last night doing static testing, I was doing it through an LPS filter. Let's see what other ones we can pick up. Now, that should be far enough to where I can pick up just the barest hints of it. There we go. Sometimes it needs to be reminded what it's doing. I'm going to mute the mic for a little bit. So as you can see, the go-to is a little off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slew over this star. I will then center that in sharp cap, then resync. Now, while we're doing this, I'm going to, yeah, it's still off. I'm going to play with the settings a little bit. I'm going to turn and see if I can pick up some hints. Maybe run a longer exposure. Let's see. Let's do a 2-second. Base out the levels. So we got a little something here. We could play with this and do not DSS. Let's look at the overlay. Now, I said that I kind of noticed a little bit here, and that is consistent with the, somewhat consistent with what Stellarium says. And basically, I'm just using the picture option in Stellarium. The transfer is still turned down a bit, so we'll see. Now, one of the things I was talking about was the ability to rapid stack exposures live. So what I'm going to do here real quick is we're going to do a 3-frame stack. 1, 2, there's 3, and that sky's way too bright for this, but let's go ahead and drop the exposure down a little bit. I'm doing 1 second exposures, 3 frame stack. It comes in every third frame, pull it out. Um, my gain's still pretty high, so what I'll do is I'll just drop that down a little bit. Go in and adjust the levels. Oh, my color's horrible. Under better skies or with filters, you can see where this would play out pretty nicely. Unfortunately, in this case, not doing so hot because I am not shooting filters. And what I can do is, if you guys give me a second, I can just simply walk outside, drop a filter on, not worry about focus too much, but just drop a filter on and run longer exposure, little 3 frame stacks. Go ahead and reload this. Let's make sure all my settings are correct. Okay. But again, we're not, the whole goal of this is, kind of like an outreach thing. Pump it up just a little bit. Now, what I'm using to interact with is I'm watching the output, watching OBS's output while my cursor is interacting in the stellarium window. So as you can see here, I've got these overlays here. Go back to binary view. I can go back to my overlay view, turn that off, and you see your various objects here. Go back in, and yes, we have double or double cluster, um, and a couple of other targets. Again, this is just a live field test this is the first live field test of the augmented reality project I was working on. Just wanted to share this with you guys. If you have any questions, want to know how I set this up and all, like I said, I'll be doing a how-to video and posting a how-to guide on my Facebook page. So I'm going to wrap this up. I know it wasn't too long, didn't see a lot of stuff, but again, we do have a bright moon in the sky as well. But until next time, clear skies and revel in your uniqueness in this vast universe.